Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe and Master of all. Father, I pray that you help us and guide us through these chapters in Exodus to understand the message beneath the message that you'd like us to understand. Please know that we do this Bible study for your glory and your glory alone. All praise be to you, Lord. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
All right. We live here, brother?
Yes, we are. We're good to go.
All right, so starting in chapter 12 of Exodus, the Passover lamb. Now Adonai spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, "This month will mark the beginning of months for you. It is to be the first month of the year for you. Tell all the congregation of Israel that on the 10th day of this month each man is to take a lamb for his family, one lamb for the household. But if the household is too small for a lamb, then he and his nearest neighbor are to take one according to the number of the people. According to each person eating, you are to make your count for the lamb. Your lamb is to be without blemish, a year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You must watch over it until the 14th day of the same month. Then the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel is to slaughter it at twilight. They are to take the blood and put it on the two doorposts and on the crossbeam of the houses where they will eat it. They are to eat the meat that night, roasted over a fire. With matzot and bitter herbs, they are to eat it. Do not eat any of the raw or boiled. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled with water, but only roasted with fire. Its head with its legs and its innards. So let nothing of it remain until the morning. Whatever remains until the morning you are to burn with fire. Also you are to eat it this way, with the loins girded, your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You are to eat it in haste. It is Adonai's Passover. For I will go through the land of Egypt on that night and strike down every firstborn, both men and animals. And I will execute judgments against all the gods of Egypt. I am Adonai. The blood will be a sign for you on the houses where you are. When I see the blood, I will pass over you, so there will be no plague among you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. This day is to be a memorial for you. You are to keep doing it as a feast to Adonai. Throughout your generations, you are to keep it as an eternal ordinance. For 7 days you are to eat matzah, but on the first day you must remove hametz from your houses, for whoever eats hametz from the first day until the 7th day, that soul will be cut off from Israel. The first day is to be a holy assembly for you, as well as the 7th day. No manner of work is to be done on those days, except what is to be eaten by every person. That alone may be prepared for you. So you are to observe the feast of Matzot, for on this very same day I have brought your ranks out of the land of Egypt. Therefore you are to observe this day throughout your generations as an eternal ordinance, during the first month in the evening of the 14th day of the month. You are to eat matzot until the evening of the 21st day of the month. For 7 days no hametz is to be found in your houses, for whoever eats hametz, that soul will be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he is an outsider or one who is born in the land. You are to eat no hametz in all your houses. You are to eat matzot. Then Moses called for all the elders. One second.
I'll pick it up there for you.
Thank you, brother.
Then Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, "Go select an animal from the flock according to your families and slaughter the Passover animal. Take a cluster of hyssop, dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and brush the lintel and the two doorposts with some of the blood in the basin. None of you may go out the door of the house until morning, when the Lord passes through to strike Egypt and sees the blood of the lintel and the two doorposts. He will pass over the door and not let the destroyer enter your houses to strike you. Keep this command permanently as a statute for you and your descendants when you enter the land of the Lord, when you enter the land that the Lord will give you, as he has promised. You are to observe the ceremony when your children ask you, 'What does the ceremony mean to you?' You are to reply, 'It is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord. For he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians and he spared our homes.' So the people knelt low and worshipped. Then the Israelites went and did this. They did just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. Now at midnight, the Lord struck every firstborn male in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and every firstborn of the livestock. During the night, Pharaoh got up, he, along with all of his officials and all the Egyptians that were, and there was a loud wailing throughout Egypt, because there wasn't a house without someone dead. He summoned Moses and Aaron during the night and said, "Get out immediately from among my people, both you and the Israelites, and go worship the Lord as you have said. Take even your flocks and your herds, as you have asked, and leave, and also bless me." Now the Egyptians pressured the people in order to send them out quickly out of the country, for they said, "We're all going to die." So the people took their dough before it was leavened, with their kneading bowls wrapped up in their clothes on their shoulders. The Israelites acted on Moses' word and asked the Egyptians for silver and gold items and for clothing. And the Lord gave the people such favor in the Egyptians that they gave them what they requested. In this way, they plundered the Egyptians. The Israelites traveled from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 able-bodied men on foot, besides their families. A mixed crowd also went up with them, along with a huge number of livestock, both flocks and herds. The people baked the dough they had brought out of Egypt into unleavened loaves, since it had no yeast. For when they were driven out of Egypt, they could not delay and had not prepared provisions for themselves. The time that the Israelites lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, on that same day, all the Lord's military divisions went out from the land of Egypt. It was a night of vigil in honor of the Lord, because he would bring them out of the land of Egypt. This same night is in honor of the Lord, a night of vigil for all the Israelites throughout the generations. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the statute of the Passover. No foreigner may eat it, but any slave a man has purchased may eat it after you have circumcised him. A temporary resident or hired worker may not eat the Passover. It is to be eaten in one house. You may not take any of the meat outside of the house, and you may not break any of its bones. The whole community of Israel must celebrate it. If an alien resides among you and wants to observe the Lord's Passover, every male in his household must be circumcised, and then he may participate. He will become like a native of the land, but no uncircumcised person may eat it. The same law will apply to both the native and the alien who resides among you." Then all the Israelites did this. They did just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. On that same day, the Lord brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt according to their military divisions. Chapter.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh, you got
Thank
it?
you
Okay.
for that. I can read the next one. Sorry, my little one fell pretty hard, and it was a lot of
No, you're fine. You're
crying. All right, chapter 13, redemption of the firstborn. Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, "Consecrate to me all the firstborn from every womb of Israel, both men and animals. This is mine." Moses said to the people, "Remember this day on which you came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage. For by a strong hand Adonai brought you out from this place. No hametz may be eaten. This day in this month of Aviv you are going out. When Adonai brings you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, and the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey, you are to observe this service during this month. For 7 days you are to eat matzah, and the seventh day is to be a feast to Adonai. Matzot is to be eaten throughout the 7 days, and no hametz is to be seen among you, nor within any of your brothers. You are to tell your son on that day, saying, It is because of what Adonai did for me when I came out of Egypt. So it will be like a sign on your hand and a reminder between your eyes, so that the Torah of Adonai may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand Adonai has brought you out of Egypt. You are to keep this ordinance as a mode from year to year. Now when Adonai brings you into the land of the Canaanite, as he swore to you and your fathers, and gives it you, you are to set apart to Adonai every firstborn from the womb, and every firstborn male animal, and you have will be Adonai's. Every firstborn donkey you are to redeem with a lamb, and if you do not redeem it, then you are to break its neck. But you are to redeem every firstborn male among your sons. So when your son asks you in times to come, What is this? Say to him, By a strong hand Adonai brought us out from Egypt, the house of bondage. And when Pharaoh refused to let us go, Adonai slew all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both men and animals. So I sacrificed to Adonai all firstborn males, but I redeemed the firstborn of my sons. So it will be like a sign on your hand, and like frontlets between your eyes, for by a strong hand Adonai brought us out of Egypt. After Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them along the road to the land of the Philistines, although that was nearby. For God said, The people might change their minds if they see war and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the way of the wilderness to the Sea of Reeds, and Israel went up to the land of Egypt armed. Went up out of the land of Egypt armed. Moses also took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had made Israel swear an oath, saying, God will surely remember you, and then you are to carry my bones away with you. So they journeyed from Sukkoth and encamped in Ethem, on the edge of the wilderness. Adonai went before them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead the way, and a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so they could travel both day and night. The pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night never departed from the people.
Chapter 14. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, Tell the Israelites to turn back and camp in front of Pi-Hahiroth? I have no idea. Between Midgol and the sea. You must camp in front of, my goodness, Baal al-Zephon, facing it by the sea. Pharaoh will say to the Israelites, They are wandering around the land in confusion. The wilderness has boxed them in. I will harden Pharaoh's heart so that he will pursue them. Then I will receive glory by means of Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his officials changed their minds about the people and said, What have we done? We have released Israel from serving us. So he got his chariot ready and took his troops with him. He took 600 of the best chariots and all the rest of the chariots of Egypt with officers in each one. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the Israelites who were going out defiantly. The Egyptians All Pharaoh's horses and chariots, his horsemen, and his army chased after them and had caught up with them as they camped by the sea of Pi-Hahirothi, I guess, I don't know, in front of Baal Zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians coming after them. The Israelites were terrified and cried out to the Lord for help. They said to Moses, "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Isn't this what we told you in Egypt? Leave us alone so that we may serve the Egyptians. It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." But Moses said to the people, "Don't be afraid, stand firm, and see the Lord's salvation, that he will accomplish for you today, for the Egyptians, for that he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians today you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you must be quiet." The Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to break camp. As for you, lift up your staff, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. As for me, I am going to harden the hearts of the Egyptians, so that they will go in after them, and I will receive glory by means of Pharaoh, all his army, and his chariots, and his horsemen. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord, when I receive glory through Pharaoh, his chariots, and his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who was going in front of the Israelite forces, moved and went behind them. The pillar of cloud moved from in front of them and stood behind them. It came between the Egyptians and the Israelite forces. There was a cloud of darkness. It lit up the night, and neither group came near the other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord drove the sea back with a powerful east wind all that night and turned the sea into dry land. So the waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with the waters like a wall to them on their right and their left. The Egyptians set out in pursuit, all of Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen, and went into the sea after them. During the morning watch, the Lord looked down. The Lord looked down at the Egyptian forces from the pillar of fire and cloud, and threw the Egyptian forces into confusion. He caused their chariot wheels to swerve, and he made them drive with difficulty. "Let's get away from Israel," the Egyptians said, "because the Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the water may come back on the Egyptians, on their chariots and horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea returned to its normal depth, while the Egyptians were trying to escape from it. The Lord threw them into the sea. The water came back and covered the chariots and horsemen, plus the entire army of Pharaoh that had gone after them into the sea. Not even one of them survived, but the Israelites had walked through the sea on dry ground, with the waters like a wall to them on their right and their left. That day the Lord saved Israel from the power of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dead on the seashore. When Israel saw the great power that the Lord used against the Egyptians, the people feared the Lord and believed in him and in his servant Moses.
All right. Chapter 15. I will sing to Adonai, for he is highly exalted. The horse. I'm sorry, I might have missed something. It says, Then Moses and Israel sang this song to Adonai. I will sing to Adonai, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Adonai is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will glorify him. My father's God, and I will exalt him. Adonai is a warrior. Adonai is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has hurled into the sea, and his chosen captains have sunk into the sea of reeds. The deeps cover them. They sank to the depths like a stone. Your right hand, Adonai, is glorious in power. Your right hand, Adonai, dashes the enemy to pieces. In the greatness of your excellency, you overthrow those who resist you. You send forth your wrath. It consumes them as stubble. With the blast of your nostrils, the water piled up. The flood stood upright as a heap. The deeps became firm ground in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My lust shall gorge on them. I will draw my sword. My hand will destroy them. You blew with your wind, the sea covered them. They sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you, Adonai, among the gods? Who is like you, glorious in holiness, awesome in praises, doing wonders? You stretched out your right hand, the earth swallowed them. You, in your loving kindness, led the people you have redeemed. You guided them in your strength to your holy habitation. When the peoples hear, they will tremble. Anguish and will seize in the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chiefs of Edom are terrified. Trembling grips Moab's mighty men. All of Canaan's inhabitants will melt away. Terror and dread will fall on them. By the greatness of your arm, they will become still as stone. Till your people cross over, Adonai, till the people whom you purchased cross over. You bring them in and plant them in the mountain of your inheritance, the place, Adonai, that you have made for yourself to dwell in, the sanctuary, Adonai, which your hands have prepared. Adonai will reign forever and ever. His horsemen went into the sea, but Adonai brought the waters of the sea back over them. Israel walked in the midst of the sea on dry ground. Then Miriam, the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took the tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing, as Miriam sang to them. Sing to Adonai, for he is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. Then Moses led Israel onward from the sea of reeds. They went out into the wilderness of Shur. But they traveled 3 days in the wilderness and found no water. When they came to Marah, they could not drink from the waters because they were bitter. On account of this, it was called Marah. So the people complained to Moses, saying, Are we going to drink? Or what are we going to drink? So he cried out to Adonai, and Adonai showed him a tree. When he threw it into the waters, they were made sweet. There he made a statue and an ordinance for them. And there he tested them. He said, If you diligently listen to the voice of Adonai your God, do what is right in his eyes, pay attention to his mitzvot, and keep all of his decrees, I will put none of the diseases on you which I have put on the Egyptians, for I am Adonai who heals you. Then they came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water and 70 palm trees. So they camped there by the waters.
Do you want to take a break there and talk about it, or are you good to go?
Yeah, we can take a little break. That sounds good.
All right. Is there anything that you specifically saw or no?
Simple things is it's just a constant encouragement to see just how much God is willing to do to protect His people, and it's kind of like we talked about last night, or not last night, last Bible study about Joseph. Right, like obviously, the Lord is not capable of evil things. He doesn't want us to suffer. He doesn't want us to go through troubling times. But sometimes, like just now, what was mentioned, they were being in the wilderness for 3 days without any water. Obviously, they're probably very, very thirsty. Some people, might be even having some issues with that. Depending on how often they're used to drinking. But either way, God always has a way. You know what I mean? He always will show a way, and like he did for Joseph, even though he got the short end of the stick big time. And it just seems like the more and more we read, it's just like the more and more we see that God will always find a way, and He's the ultimate strategist, and He's got a plan A through Z for you, and so on.
Right.
And I just really thought it was interesting too how specific uh, God was with the. I don't know if it's a symbolism, uh, but whenever the Passover lamb was going on, how he wanted them to take uh, either sheep or goat that was unfazed, like a perfect sheep, and they had to put the blood on the baseboards, and then God would look. I just feel like there's a lot of symbolism going on too with that, and I think that we've talked about that before. How God kind of
Oh yeah.
a lot with symbolism, right? And that's a big thing to keep in mind when we're reading scriptures. And I think we might tie in some of the symbolism as we read more.
Oh yeah. I always find it interesting. I don't know. It's like the thing that always shocks me the most. I try to remember like that there's time that passes between each one, but it's just always like it's always crazy to me every time I read Exodus, like how seemingly quickly Israelites are like, God's the greatest. And then they're like, well, where's God? It feels like
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
from sentence to sentence almost. So, and I know it's
Right.
like sometimes it's literally days, but um, a lot of times there's time that's passing. So, and I would like to
And
think like people wouldn't do that, but people would definitely do that nowadays, right? So,
right, and what I kind of picked up on that was which this is an amazing miracle, right? Like obviously when uh, Moses stretched out his hands, a very iconic story, the Bible story,
yeah,
right? But it mentioned there his people said in chapter 14, I think it was verse 11, saying, "Why have you dealt this way with us to bring us out of Egypt? Did we not
right.
say to you in Egypt, let us alone?" Like, so these guys were obviously in Egypt. What I would think from that is that because of the timeline and when we read the other chapters, I assume that the plagues happened. We knew that there was some time between the plagues, yes, but I assume these Israelites also saw some of the calamities that befell Egypt, and I imagine they saw that and they saw the protection of God, because every time
Yeah,
there was a plague on Egyptians, there was some sort of cover, a tent, or protection for the Israelites, whatever there was the darkness or the locust or whatever it was. And so it is kind of like what you said. Like sometimes actually a reminder to me, like, hey, even though I can feel God so heavily one day, I gotta keep on, you know, remind myself to be grateful, to strengthen my faith, to continue to love, because uh, just because I'm feeling full of Holy Spirit and super loving one day doesn't mean I'm gonna feel that way or tomorrow or next week or in a year from now.
right.
And even like you said, even then they're like, "Hey, man, you should have just left us in Egypt. Like this is all your fault." You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, kind of forgetting the protection that the Lord has given them throughout everything. And at this point, reading it, you can sense the pattern, right? Like, well, hey, okay, something really bad happens to Egyptians. You guys are good. Then something bad happens to you guys are good again. Then God protects you again. Then God, you know what I mean?
Right.
But I think, like you said, living like that out that timeline, unless I've missed it, and I could probably study it more. I don't know if there's we know that there was 430 years that they were in Egypt, but we don't know
Yeah, I'm
exactly
pretty sure it's
how long it was like.
years that
Yeah.
in like they're wandering in the wilderness for like a pretty good amount of time, if I remember right.
Right.
How long did the
Oh yeah, I think it
Israelites
was
wander in the
30 years.
wilderness in Exodus? 40
Hey,
years.
y'all come here. Yeah, so I wonder how long it
Yeah,
was up
it's
until
40
this point.
years that they were in between. They were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years. So in between them leaving the plagues to, um, or leaving Egypt, I should say, after the plagues to, uh, presumably up to this, like maybe because I think they still wander in the wilderness for like a little bit of time after after the like the parting of the Red Sea. So I'm
Yeah, I wonder how
assuming
long that
maybe
was
so
from when they left
like a
left
decade
Egypt.
or something. Who knows, right? Like
Yeah. I think an interesting way to figure that out would be to um look, this might be silly, but to go into like if we could figure out like, hey, where they were in Egypt and then where they were at the Sea of Reeds and like map that out, like, okay, this is like, a 30-day hike. So by the time they left Egypt and when they got to that place, like how long that might have been. Um, but either way, I think like the important part for me personally is just to remember, hey, always stay vigilant and building my faith. And, just because I feel great today or super holy today doesn't mean that the devil isn't always trying to do the exact opposite. And so just to keep
Yeah.
on keeping on with that,
According to this, hold on, I found a map of it, or like a timeline of it. Arrive at Red Sea. So this says, hold on, Pentecost Law of Moses was on day 53. It says they arrived at the Red Sea. What is it? 8 days. Day 17, supposedly, according to this, they arrive at the Dead Sea, or the Red Sea. Sorry. Then they spend 8 days at the Red Sea. Yeah, I don't know. Sabbath. I don't know. According to this, it's 53 days in total. But I'm just curious.
Either way, that's still.
I mean, 53 days is like, no offense, but that's like a lot more. That's a lot less understandable for me.
Right.
Right? Like 40
Right.
years is like, oh, okay, well, like, it's been a few decades. I can somewhat understand that. But it's like 50 days, and you're like, man, God abandoned us. You should have left us in Egypt.
Yeah, I kind of relate that to like somebody who goes to jail, right? Like a young kid who goes to jail for doing something
Yeah.
really silly one night, and like he's in there for like a week, and it's like, oh man, like he just like, dude, I'm coming out, I'm clean, I'm good, I'm gonna stop drinking, underage drinking, or whatever he does, right? Whatever he did,
Right.
and then like within a month and a half, he's back doing his
Yeah, I mean, I can't
rambunctious
say that I wouldn't do the
ways.
same thing if I was in their shoes, to be fair, but
Right,
I'm
right.
sure it's hard, but it's just like,
I,
it's crazy
I,
to me. I don't
I
know.
Well, I think it just goes to show how actively we got to be in pursuit of keeping that faith, in check. And
Yeah.
I've felt it. I've definitely 100% felt it in the face of opposition. Sometimes I felt like a little leak in my faith, right? Or like I stuttered to propose something or to speak up. I've definitely had those before, and I'm like, oh man, like I should have been rocking that. Like I should have been flaming with the Holy Spirit in that situation. You know what I mean? And so I've definitely
Yeah.
experienced that.
I think it
But
just
I've
kind of
never
like proves
experienced
the,
like
I feel like the entirety of Exodus kind of proves the parable of the sower to be accurate.
mm,
If you remember what the parable
how
of the
so?
sower is.
Yeah. How so?
So like, hold on, let me try to I gotta remember how to invite him to speak. I'm so bad at remembering how to do this each time. It's not even funny. I do not remember to save my life. Move to no, I don't want to move him. I know there's an invite to speak button. Why can I never find it?
Oh, here, let me
It's hand
right
raised.
click, and then it's the very top
Oh, it's
invite
at
to
the
speak.
top. I always
Yeah, yeah.
overlook it, dude.
I look at the bottom too because that's where
Yeah,
the move and everything
goodness
is.
gracious.
Oh,
No, but okay, so the parable of the sower, right? So I don't know if you guys remember it or not, but I remember it very well because I just made a YouTube video on it. So, hold on one
Yep,
second.
yep. I remember it very
Um,
well because of YouTube videos.
so right, yeah. So it's Jesus says, well, think about a farmer going out to sow his seed, right? So as he's walking on the path to go to his field, there's seeds falling out of his pocket. There's
yeah.
there's seeds that fall out of his pocket on the path, right? These seeds
the bird swoops down, eats the seeds, flies off. There's seeds that fall on the rocks, right? Now these seeds, they grow very quickly, but then they die out because the soil is thin, right? There's not a whole lot of substance there for them to be able to live long term.
And to interject real quick, Matt, this is Matthew chapter 13, verses 18 and on. Just so
Yes,
you know.
18 through 21.
Perfect.
Yep.
Matthew 18.
Matthew 18, chapter 13,
21.
18 through 21.
Chapter 13. Okay.
Yeah. So then there's the seeds that fall into the thorn bushes, right? So now these seeds, they grow up, and then the thorns choke them out, so they wither and die. Now there's the last seeds, these are the ones that are planted in the good soil, and they grow up because they have a good foundation. So it kind of comes like, you got to think of like when these people are around, right? Like Moses is technically like the first time God's interacting with anybody, really, other than like Adam or anything like that. But like outside of like Genesis, right? Like this is the first time like God is like really taking like a super active role, at least since like on this big of a scale, right? Like they're literally following like the cloud of fire at night.
Yeah,
you know,
crazy.
like up to this point, it's just been kind of like, you know, him talking to different people and telling them to go to different places. So it's a super active role for him to take all of a sudden. So I kind of look at like the people of Israel kind of like being maybe like those seeds that fall on the rock, right? Where there's because the parable of sower is individuals, right? So there's the people who there's the types of people that are the seeds that fall on the path, right? And they don't understand the word. There's no foundation for them whatsoever. So then the evil one, the devil, in this case the bird, swoops away, comes down, takes the word from their heart, and they lose the path, right? They lose the message. Whereas I take the Israelites to be more like the seeds that fall on the rock, right? There's a little bit of foundation there for them. They have some teachings from their forefathers, but like the seed that falls on the rock, so they sprout, right? They're super into it. They're all about God, but then the sun scorches them because there's not enough foundation. That's their tribulations, and then they wither and they die, and then they kind of just go through that process over and over. That's like feels like the whole story of Exodus to me. That's almost what it feels like. As Exodus is like the parable of the sower in like a snapshot almost, which I never really noticed until until reading this.
But you are correct, because them going around the wilderness is due to them having a lack of faith in God.
No, because God had them turn around because He wanted to. So they were going around the wilderness, right? Because originally God didn't want them to go a certain path because He thought them seeing the war would make them fear and want to turn back to Egypt. So He took them through the wilderness, and then He was kind of having them walk. I don't remember the exact towns' names because they're, I don't want to say gibberish, but they're weird in English, right? So, and then He's like, he's going to harden Pharaoh's heart. He's going to make him chase after him, so that way all of Egypt will know that I'm the Lord. So then He has them camp by the Red Sea, and then obviously the parting of the Red Sea and so on and so forth. But,
yeah. So it was in chapter 13 verses 17, Stampy, so you can see it says, after Pharaoh had let the people go, God did not lead them along the road to the land of the Philistines, although that was nearby, for God said the people might change their minds if they see war and return to Egypt. So being super understanding right there, and then like Matt said in beginning of chapter 14, it says, speak to Israel so they may turn back and encamp before Pi Hahiroth, whatever.
Pi Hahiroth.
Whatever that is.
In the sea.
Yep.
Out
and
by
that's
Baal al-Safon or whatever. Yeah. So there's a bunch of words there, but
I see that as like is such a. It's almost like mercy in a weird way, because it's like he made them go to the wilderness. He knew He was going to take care of them, right? It was a test of faith, if you will. But it's like also on top, he wanted them like, hey, wait, I want to show you one more thing that's going to strengthen your face so much. I'm going to harden the heart of the Pharaoh.
No,
I'm going to lead them. I'm going to make you turn around, and you might be like, why are we turning around? Right? But like, just wait for
This
what I'm
one
going to
isn't
show.
even about
Numbers-
the Israelites, right? Like a byproduct that's going to affect them too. But
Well,
like, he
Numbers
specifically
goes
mentions
into
Egypt.
Numbers goes into why they had to walk. So Numbers 14:11, and the Lord says to Moses, "How long will these people despise me? How long will they not believe in me, in spite of all the signs I've done for them?" And then in 14:13 he says, "But Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear of it, for you have brought up to these people that your might from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of this land, they will have heard that you, O Lord, are the midst of this people. For you, O Lord, are seen face to face, and your cloud stands over them, and you go before them, in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Now, if you kill these people, if you kill these people as one man, then the nations who have heard your fame will say, oh, it is because the Lord was not able to bring his people into the land that he swore to give them, that he killed them in the wilderness. And now, please let the power of the Lord be as great as you have promised, saying, the Lord is slow to anger and abounding in steadfast love, forgiving iniquity and transgression. But he will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity, the fathers of the children and the third of the fourth generation.
So that's go ahead, sorry.
And then in the next one, I'm slowly reading it.
So that's partially,
Yeah,
I could say that's
right here.
partially gives an insight to the wilderness. But that specific conversation is after, so Moses goes up the hill and he's creating the tablets with God for the 10 Commandments, right? And he's up there for, I think it's 40 days or 41 days, if I remember correctly. And the people are like freaking out on Aaron while he's up there. And then they make the effigy of the calf. So that's that conversation that he's having there. That's because Austin and I have talked about that before.
I thought that happened after right before they go into the
No.
land.
It happens on Mount Sinai. If that's what unless I'm misunderstanding the question.
That could be. No, so doesn't it happen after the 40 years?
That sounds like the conversation that I'm reckoning. In Exodus. Hold on 1 second.
Well, also too, there's the
Good.
Well, here's the verse I was looking for. Numbers 14:34. So according to the numbers, so the Lord says to the people, according to the number of days in which you spied out the land, 40 days, a year for each day, you shall bear your iniquity for 40 years, and you shall know my displeasure. So that's why I thought that they're like they were doing something that God didn't like, and God's like, well.
So I wonder if that's as a result of, is that a punishment for the conversation that I was talking about?
And you're talking about, say
so
one more time for me?
It starts to happen in, it's later Exodus, right? But so Moses is up on a mountain with God, and he's making the tablets, right? So he's up there, and while they're up there, I can kind of read ahead a little bit if we want, just to, but. But chapter 32 in Exodus, it starts to talk about the gold calf, right? And this is like the people of Israel, like they're losing faith. Moses has been up there for a long time. They're starting to freak out a little bit. And so they want the effigy. So then Aaron gathers up all the gold, casts the gold into the fire, and it makes an effigy of a calf. And then they start to worship it, or some of them do anyways. So then Moses comes down, he throws down the tablets, he's freaking out, he's mad at them, and he's cursing them, and he goes back up the mountain. And then God's obviously upset. But then Moses starts to plead with them and have a conversation with them. I can try to...
Yeah, I think
it's chapter 32, verses 11, after when you're talking about when Adonai said, so my wrath may burn hot against them, and
Yes,
so I may
yeah.
consume them. And then Moses is like Lord, no, like
Lord, why does
remember
your anger
your
burn against your people? So that sounds like the conversation that you were just talking about in Numbers to me.
Yeah, and it probably is.
Yeah. So then I'm
it's probably
assuming the
a
40 years in the
combination of a
wilderness
bunch-
is the punishment. I mean, Moses
bad.
also punishes them, but the punishment is that, I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at.
Okay.
Because I think the overall generality of it was that God did so much stuff for them, and
Oh,
they
yeah,
continued
clearly,
to turn
yeah.
their back on.
Yeah, and that's
Turn
what
their
me and
back
Austin
on
were
him.
talking about too, right? It's like, I thought it was like it always surprises me every time I read it. Like, I can't say that I necessarily wouldn't do the same, or certainly that other people would as well. But yeah, I don't know. It always just kind of blows my mind a little bit. But I think it's also because it's like the whole point of the parable, right, is to make people like the whole point of the parable is that you have to have a good foundation. So the Old Testament is your foundation, and without the Old Testaments and having a firm understanding of the foundation, right, through which the secrets of the kingdom or heaven are hidden, you can't truly understand the New Testament. That's the whole point of the parable of the sower, according to Matthew. That's not me reading into it. That's according to Matthew, coming from Jesus. So it just makes me think that like that's almost like a little picture of like what happens when you don't have that foundation. Yeah.
Oh, most definitely. I think, and I agree with you on that because everything that happens in the New Testament is of the foundation of the Old Testament. I mean,
Right.
all the prophecies that Jesus fulfills and everything that talked of the coming Messiah, it is the foundation was laid for that in the
Right.
Old Testament.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
I mean, I think it's even still, I think it's important for us to understand and note the history of our Lord Jesus Christ, of
Oh,
God
yeah.
Himself,
Yeah.
and the people who walked among them, and the reason why God, everything happened the way it happened. I think having this knowledge arms us to not only know who God is, but also know who our adversary is
True.
as
yeah.
well.
Yeah, I agree.
Because we have to. I mean, just like what I think Paul says in one of his letters to the churches, we have to take the word of God and use it as our armor and weaponry against those who goes against God.
Right.
So, and that requires knowledge and understanding through God of the Old and New Testament and any other book that may be necessary.
No, I agree.
Yeah, my brain is a little slow today.
No, you're fine. You're fine. No, I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I think that. Yeah, I don't know. I had like a minor like revelation or epiphany today, and I was watching. It was a song reaction video of. It was a Dax song. I don't remember if it's about Revelations. I don't remember if it's called Revelations, but
I think
wait,
it is. It is.
I know which
Dax?
one you're talking about.
Yeah,
Dax,
Dax
yeah.
has a song called Revelation.
yeah. So it's the first time I had ever heard it, but him I was listening to him sing, and he made me think of something, and I wrote it down because I'm gonna do a YouTube video on it. But so I think that kind of what I have right, just reading over it. So it's like the greatest lie that's ever told by the enemy, right? Is like he tricks us into thinking that we have time, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of like Jesus says that all the time, like throughout the New Testament, throughout Revelations, right? No man knows the hour, no man knows when it's going to happen, but the judgment's coming. So you just pretty much need to always be ready for it, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the enemy constantly tricks us into being like, oh well, I can repent tomorrow, or I can repent. I can repent later. I'll read the Bible later. I don't feel like it right now. I'll read it later. So he always tricks us into thinking that we have time. But it's like, so like, if you think about it, right? So the past is already gone, right? The sentence that I said 5 seconds ago is gone. It can never happen again. It's gone. It's dead, or may as well be dead. The future is not promised, right? No man knows the hour. No man knows the instant. The rapture could start after I finish this sentence. We don't know. But
Yeah.
furthermore, right, you could die at any second, right? I could die at the end of
Mhm.
the sentence. We don't know.
Yep.
But
Yep.
so that means the only thing that you have is the now, right? That's the only thing that you can count on. So if you're not spending the now, making sure that you're ready for the rapture, then the enemy is winning. The enemy's deceiving you.
And I can't remember to go along with that. I wish I could remember this. It's such a great verse, but there's a verse where I believe it's Apostle Paul talking about how, like, basically, if you're not spending your time doing something that is going to benefit you, right, and as far as getting you closer to the Lord, right,
Right,
and
right.
strengthening your faith, if something is like, I was having a conversation with Kendall the other day about some just things that were going on and things that were happening. It's like, hey, look, if you find yourself in a situation you don't feel like you are getting closer to God, or if you don't feel like Jesus could be in that room with you and approve of what you're doing, then
Exactly.
you need to not be doing that. Like,
Yeah.
as bottom line as it is, and a lot for even myself for a long time, it was so hard to hear, like, hey, well, that's wrong. You shouldn't be doing that. Why? Well, because of that illusion that you have in your head, like, oh, dude, I can do it. I can do it. Just I can do it one more time. I'll be fine. I know I need to repent. Which I know it sounds horrible, but I mean, a lot of people do this. I've done it myself. It's just like, I have time. Like, even if I just find God in the next 5 years, and I'm not rushed. Okay, I have so much time, and then I gotta be young, and I gotta go experience life. You only live once. All that bull crap.
Yeah. I think it's like maybe it's not the original lie, but maybe it's top 5 lies, right?
It was definitely huge. It's massive. It's
Yeah,
massive.
it's
It's
certainly
misleading so many people.
the
And
misconception
then
of time, more time than we have, and everybody lives like that, right? I'll do it later, and not
and
just
even
with
people
God, but
that
with everything.
well, even people that have adapted the you only have the presence, right? Like, the future isn't um guaranteed. A lot of
Mhm.
that has been very perverted to, like, go live your life to the
Yeah,
fullest right
like
now.
a
Do
YOLO
what
type
Yeah,
your
stuff.
heart
yeah.
says.
Yeah.
Fall victim to your lust.
Mhm.
Sleep with that person because you might never know. We might all die tomorrow. Well, then do you really think you should be going out and fornicating and sleeping with that woman? Like, don't
Right.
you think you should be, knee deep in the scripture right now, and focusing on your faith and all that? But
I
I'm
agree.
not here to judge. I'm just saying, I think
No, just for
is a
me,
important
right? Like,
point. Yeah,
I,
it's very
so one of the
important.
things that obviously, thank you to Stampy, right, was Romans is that superbly impacted my entire outlook on my life. So, um, just that what is it? I think it's Romans chapter 12. Don't quote me on the exact chapter, but I'm pretty sure it's 12. Let me find it real quick if I can find Romans. I think with these tabs it'd be easier, but so pretty sure it's 12. Trying to the truth rejection. Yes, I'm surprised that I remember that. Chapter 12, um, verses 9 through 21, quite possibly is the single for me, the single most impactful few verses in the entirety of the Bible, which is, I mean, it just lays out Christian ethics, right? Um,
Yeah.
and
9 through 21.
superbly changed my entire life. And it even set me on a path. So I got to a point, right, where I was feeling like I felt really weird one day about like cussing. Like, if you know anybody that knows me, I cuss a lot, or I did anyways. I cuss a lot, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then I felt weird about it one day. I was like, maybe I shouldn't. And then I was like, nah, whatever, dude. Like, God doesn't care. And then I watched George Chenko, right?
Yes.
I haven't watched a
Yeah.
lot of him, but I started to after this episode, right? So he had, what are they called? Two female, like they're like TikTokers, um, but they're like
They're
Bible.
sisters. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like best friends, and yeah, they do TikTok. I don't remember
Oh,
their
yeah,
names.
yeah, yeah. I know what you're talking about. Bible.
Bible sister or Bible
I
babes.
know what you're talking I
Well,
know what
something
you're
like
talking
that,
about,
right?
yeah.
Somewhere
Yeah,
along
yeah.
those lines. I'm horrible
Uh-huh.
names, but
Yeah.
anyways, they push him on his cussing. And it's the first episode I ever watch.
Hmm.
They push him on his cussing, and they point out Peter. And kind of like I was talking to you earlier, right, where he denounces God, or Jesus tells him, "You're going to denounce me 3 times before the rooster crows." And if you look at that, when he's denouncing him, he does so on the 3rd time, and how he nails it home is he starts to curse. So it's
Yeah, it
kind of
says he
like
curses.
that vileness. That's when it nails home for him that he doesn't know him. Is he spewing venom out of his mouth, right? And Jesus talks about that too. Like, it's not what you put into your body; it's what comes out through your heart that will defile you.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, from
Right.
then,
Yeah.
I mean, trust me, I've been struggling with it, but
Right.
You and me
let's just
both,
say
man. I've been-
my reduction in, I've reduced my cussing significantly, and I'm still working on it. But
I'm
Right,
right
that's
there
great.
with you, man.
yeah.
I still.
It's
I
hard.
got a ways
I
to
did it
go.
so much for so many years. So it's
Yeah, habits are.
Well,
old
also
habits are
too,
very hard. Very true to die hard.
I do want to say, because I'm actually only going to be able to spend an hour today in Bible study because I got some stuff I got to attend to. But along with that point, I think it was going back to Stampy's amazing scripture he pointed out in Romans 14. It kind of in that chapter, it kind of goes to show, hey, if I'm and Kendall really helped me see this, like, hey, if I'm doing something that offends somebody else because they think it's wrong to do, then that's on me. Like,
oh yeah. Not
they're
only
for
it's
them
woe to
stumbling.
you, not
Yeah,
as on me. It's woe to you, right? Like,
yeah,
Oh,
uh-huh.
yeah, for you to lead somebody else into sin is, I mean, it's one of the greatest crimes.
It's like, look at what we learned in Matthew. It's like with when Jesus speaking to the Sadducees and the Pharisees, like how he said, these people that you are misleading, right, in a sense that you're speaking these falsities to, like all these people, you will suffer.
Yeah, for each
The
of them.
their blood is on your hand, and you will suffer accordingly, right? And which is just, it really puts in perspective, like you said about, we got to be very careful what comes out of our mouths, become what we do, and how we
Oh yeah.
portray ourselves, and we gotta put on that new personality, right, that they speak of. But yeah, boys, I don't mean to cut it early. I'm gonna have to just do the hour today.
that's fine.
We had some really crazy stuff happen this weekend, so I got to get with the fam bam. But enjoy the rest of the study, boys. I think Garrett just hopped in the audience, so y'all enjoy.
Yes,
You as well,
sir.
man.
Yes, sir. Are you sticking around or no?
I can for a little bit. Yeah.
Okay. You want to read to 20, or you want to just call it there?
I have no idea where we're at.
We're on chapter 16.
Exodus chapter 6.
So we're on like the manna and quail.
I'm down to read some more if you wanna.
Okay, yeah, I'm down with it.
Alrighty. I'll start off 16. The whole chapter 16, Exodus. The whole
If you
Israelite
want to,
community.
Craig, don't feel obligated. Sorry, I was just telling him.
No, you're
Go
good,
ahead.
man. The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the 2nd month after they had come out of Egypt, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into this desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain down bread from heaven for you. The people are to go out each day and gather enough for that day. In this way I will test them and see whether they will follow my instructions. On the 6th day they are to prepare what they bring in, and that is to be twice as much as they gather on the other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, In the evening you will know that it is the Lord who brought you out of Egypt. And in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your grumbling against him. Who are we that you should grumble against us? Moses also said, You will know that it was the Lord when he gives you the meat to eat in the evening and all the bread you want in the morning, because he had heard your grumbling against him. Who are we? You are not to grumble against us, but against the Lord. Then Moses told Aaron, "Say to the entire Israelite community, 'Come before the Lord, for he has heard your grumbling.'" While Aaron was speaking to the whole Israelite community, they looked towards the desert, and there was the glory of the Lord appearing in the cloud. The Lord said to Moses, "I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to him, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent." The Israelites did as they were told, gathered much and some little. Some gathered much, some little, and they measured it by the omer. The one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, "No one is keeping any of it till morning." However, some of them paid no attention to Moses, and they kept part of it until morning, and it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning everyone gathered as much as they needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the sixth day they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person. And the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses, and he said to them, This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be the day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning." So they saved it until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is the Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the seventh day, the Sabbath, there will not be any." Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the seventh day to gather, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. This is why on the sixth day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the seventh day. No one is to go out." So the people rested on the seventh day. The people of Israel called the bread manna. It is white like coriander seed, tasted like wafers made with honey. Moses said, "This is what the Lord has commanded. Take an omer of manna and keep it for the generations to come, so they can see the bread I have given you to eat in the wilderness when I brought you out of Egypt." So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a jar and put an omer of manna in it. Then place it before the Lord to be kept for generations to come." As the Lord commanded Moses, Aaron put the manna with the tablets of the covenant law, so that it might be preserved. The Israelites ate manna for 40 years until they came to the land that was settled. They ate manna until they reached the border of Canaan. An omer is 1/10 of an ephah. Ephah.
Yeah, so mine says it held 2 quarts, so I don't know if that's a little bit more
I have no
beneficial,
clue.
but all right. So water from the rock. The entire Israelite community left the wilderness of Sin, moving from one place to the next according to the Lord's command. They camped at Rephidim, but there was no water for the people to drink. So the people complained to Moses, "Give us water to drink." "Why are you complaining to me?" Moses replied to them. "Why are you testing the Lord?" But the people thirsted there for water and grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you even bring us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What should I do with these people?" Mood. In a little while, they will still stone me. The Lord answered Moses, "Go on ahead of the people and take some of the elders of Israel with you. Take the staff you struck the Nile with in your hand and go. I am going to stand there in front of you on the rock of Horeb. When you hit the rock, water will come out of it, and the people will drink." Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel. He named the place Massah and Meribah, because of the Israelites' complaint, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" At Rephidim, Amalek came and fought against Israel. Moses said to Joshua, select some men from us and go fight against Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the hilltop with God's staff in my hand." Joshua did as Moses had told him and fought against Amalek, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. While Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed, but whenever he put his hand down, Amalek prevailed. When Moses' hands grew heavy, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat down on it. Then Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and one on the other side, so that his hands remained steady until the sun went down. So Joshua defeated Amalek and his army with his sword. The Lord then said to Moses, "Write this down on a scroll as a reminder, and recite it to Joshua. I will completely blot out the memory of Amalek under heaven." And Moses built an altar, and named "The Lord is my banner." He said, "Indeed, my hand is lifted up toward the Lord's throne. The Lord will be at war with Amalek from generation to generation."
Alrighty. Exodus 18. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian and the father-in-law of Moses, heard of everything God had done for Moses and for his people Israel, and how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. After Moses had sent away his wife Zipporah, his father-in-law Jethro received her and her 2 sons. One son was named Gershom, for Moses said, "I have become a foreigner in a foreign land." And the other was named Eliezer, for he said, "My father God was my helper. He saved me from the sword of Pharaoh." Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, together with Moses' sons and wife, came to him in the wilderness, where he camped near the mountain of God. Jethro had sent word to him, "I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her 2 sons." So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. They greeted each other and they went into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law about everything the Lord has done to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for Israel's sake, and all about all the hardships they had met along the way, and how the Lord had saved them. Jethro was delighted to hear about all the good things that the Lord has done for Israel in rescuing them from the hands of the Egyptians. And he said, "Praise be to the Lord, who rescued from the hand of the Egyptians and of Pharaoh, and who rescued the people of the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all other gods, for he did this to those who treated Israel arrogantly." Then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and other sacrifices to God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat a meal with Moses' father-in-law in the presence of God. The next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge for the people, and they stood around him from morning till evening. When his father-in-law saw all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, "What is this you are doing for the people? Why do you why do you alone sit as judge while all these people stand around you from morning till evening?" Moses answered him, "Because the people come to me to seek God's will. Whenever they have a dispute, it is brought to me, and I decide between the parties and inform them of God's decrees and instructions." Moses' father-in-law replied, What you are doing is not good. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. The work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it alone. Listen now to me, and I will give you some advice, and may God be with you. You must be the people's representative before God, and bring their disputes to Him. Teach them His decrees and instructions, and show them the way they are to live and how they are to behave. But select capable men of all the people who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. Have them serve as judges for the people at all times, but have them bring every difficult case to you. The simple cases they can decide for themselves. That will make your load lighter, because they will share it with you. If you do this, and God so commands, you'll be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Moses listened to his father-in-law and did everything he said. He chose capable men from all Israel and made them leaders of the people, officials over thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They served as judges for all the people at all times. The difficult cases they brought to Moses, but the simple ones they decided themselves. Then Moses sent his father-in-law on his way, and Jethro returned to his own country.
Israel at Sinai. In the 3rd month, from the very day the Israelites left the land of Egypt, they came to the Sinai wilderness. They traveled from Rephidim, came to the Sinai wilderness, and camped in the wilderness. Israel camped there in front of the mountain. Moses went up the mountain to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain. This is what you must say to the house of Jacob and explain to the Israelites. You have seen what I did to the Egyptians, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now, if you will carefully listen to me and keep my covenant, you will be my own possession out of all the peoples, although the whole earth is mine, you will be my kingdom of priests and my holy nation. These are the words that you are to say to the Israelites. After Moses came back, he summoned the elders of the people and set before them all the words the Lord had commanded him. Then all the people responded together, "We will do all that the Lord has spoken." So Moses brought the people's word back to the Lord. The Lord said to Moses, "I am going to come to you in a dense cloud, so that the people will hear when I speak with you and will always believe you." Moses reported the people's words to the Lord, and the Lord told Moses, "Go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. They must wash their clothes and be prepared by the 3rd day, for on the 3rd day the Lord will come down on Mount Sinai in the sight of all the people, put boundaries for the people all around the mountain, and say, 'Be careful that you don't go up on the mountain or touch its base. Anyone who touches the mountain must be put to death. No hand may touch him. Instead he will be stoned or shot with arrows and not live. Whether an animal or human, when the ram's horn sounds a long blast, they may go up the mountain." Then Moses came down from the mountain to the people and consecrated them, and they washed their clothes. He said to the people, "Be prepared by the 3rd day. Do not have sexual relations with women." On the 3rd day, when morning came, there was thunder and lightning, a thick cloud on the mountain, and a very loud blast from a ram's horn, so that all the people in the camp shuddered. Then Moses brought the people out of the camp to meet God, and they stood at the foot of the mountain. Mount Sinai was completely enveloped in smoke because the Lord came down on it in fire. Its smoke went up like the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mountain shook violently. As the sound of the ram's horn grew louder and louder, Moses spoke, and God answered him in the thunder. The Lord came down on Mount Sinai at the top of the mountain. Then the Lord summoned Moses to the top of the mountain, and he went up. The Lord directed Moses, "Go down and warn the people not to break through to see the Lord. Otherwise, many of them will die. Even the priests who come near the Lord must consecrate themselves, or the Lord will break out in anger against them." Moses responded to the Lord, "The people cannot come up Mount Sinai since you warned us. Put a boundary around the mountain and consecrate it." And the Lord replied to him, "Go down and come back with Aaron. But the priests and the people must not break through to come up to the Lord, or he will break out in anger against them." So Moses went down to the people and told them.
Exodus 20. And God spoke all these words: "I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the 3rd and 4th generations of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love and keep my commandments. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God, for the Lord will not hold anyone guiltless who misuses his name. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you nor your son, your daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so they may live live long in the land of the Lord God is giving you. You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything else that belongs to your neighbor. When the people saw the thunder and lightning, and heard the trumpet, and saw the mountain and smoke, they trembled with fear. They stayed at a distance and said to Moses, speak to us yourself, and we will listen. But do not have God speak to us, or we will die. Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. God has come to test you, so that the fear of God will be with you, to keep you from sinning. The people remained at a distance while Moses approached the thick darkness where God was. Then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites this. You have seen for yourselves that I have spoken to you from heaven. Do not make any gods to be alongside me. Do not make for yourself gods of silver or gods of gold. Make an altar of earth for me, and sacrifice on it your burnt offerings and fellowship offerings, your sheep and your goats and your cattle. Wherever I cause my name to be honored, I will come to see you and bless you. Or come to you and bless you. If you make an altar of stones for me, do not build it with dressed stones, for you would defile it if you use a tool on it. Do not go up to my altar on steps, or your private parts may be exposed. Alrighty.
Alrighty. I did notice one thing
What's up?
real quick. I think is it 18 that Jethro was talking to Moses? Yeah, so it almost seems like Jethro created the first like judicial system. If you look at that, like that's
Yeah,
like,
but
you know what I
he's
mean?
talking when he tells Moses how to govern
Yeah,
people.
you have like different levels of judges, right? All the way up to Moses and then God, which would be like the supreme judge, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of interesting. Like it's like the first judicial system, um, which is, I don't know. I think that's super cool. It's super interesting.
That is very.
It's kind of like the whole foundation of democracy in some sort, you know?
Kinda. I think.
In a roundabout way, anyways.
Well, yeah. The main difference people would say would be democracy. People vote for it. In this case, Moses picked them. But
No, yeah, I'm just saying, like,
there are the similarities, like you're saying.
in
the
order for
similarities.
democracy to be truly democracy, you have to have a robust, trustworthy,
Network of
morally
people.
sound judicial system.
Yeah, that's
If the judicial
there's-
system is corrupted, then the whole system is, well, it's not democracy, really, at that point.
No, you are correct. No, I don't. I was just being all technical.
No, yeah. I mean, technically speaking, obviously it's not, but it's like
But
the
it's definitely-
foundations for what later
I
becomes.
mean, it wouldn't surprise me if the news on how the Israelites governed themselves traveled around the world and
No, yeah.
inspired. Because I know most people give credit to the Greeks or the Romans for democracy, but it wouldn't surprise me that over time it was traditions from Israel that spread around.
At least
that
played a
helped
part
root
in it, right? I think it would be
Yeah.
asinine to think that, Greece got up one day and was like, you know what, guys, got a really crazy idea, and had zero outside influence, or, maybe they heard, something from this place and something from that place, and then they took their own, kind of like their own ideas and kind of created what we now kind of, recognize as democracy, more or less. Anyways, it's still not, there's slight differences from what we even call it nowadays compared to them, but still, yeah, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. At the very least, it's like the earliest that I know of judicial system laid out that way. So I think that's pretty cool too.
I think so. I mean, I know that. I'm gonna be honest with you. I take that back. I have no knowledge like that of ancient, because this is long time ago. This is, I mean, hundreds of years.
Oh yeah, you're talking about
before
BC.
Jesus, so Yeah. So I'm not gonna lie.
I mean,
have
like you
no
think of
clue or
like the
knowledge.
major places that were around then, right? You think
Would
of
be I would
Egypt,
assume
you think of
Egypt,
like Babylon, you think of like those types of
China.
yeah, you think of like those types of civilizations, and they're usually god kings, emperors. Like they're not the types of people who are going to be like, let me have judges who make decisions for me, right? It's like, if anything, it's like the closest thing that they would have is like, hey, yo, I talked to the king. He said I gotta kill you. you know, so
I
it's
mean,
certainly not like an educational process, and then these people go out and like in a certain way act like modern day judges in that they hear cases and then make decisions based on the law for those for those instances. So I would be shocked if there was any. Not to say that there couldn't be that I'm unaware of, but if you look at places like Egypt and like the other civilizations that were around then, and you're talking mostly about, like I said, emperors and god kings, so it's unlikely, but certainly I guess not impossible.
down. Is that? I mean, the way I think about it, I feel like there's probably some form of this around other things. Like I'm sure a lot of kings thought themselves to be too good to be handling every trivial matter,
No, of course. They
and so
definitely delegated tasks to some degree, I'm sure.
and
Just maybe not in the same way.
yeah, I think that it's the foundations on which it occurred would probably be different.
Certainly. Yeah,
I think.
certainly.
Um, I don't know. I don't know if you noticed, but I was trying to refrain myself. Reading the commandments kind of got me. I was like, oh,
Oh yeah, like emotional?
yeah.
Yeah. I mean
I don't know.
I don't blame you, to be honest with you. It's a defining moment, right?
And I think it's cool. I was thinking to myself, I'm like slightly jealous of like not having the opportunity to be. I mean, don't get me wrong, technology and everything, that's all great. I got computer, video games. I'm not gonna lie, it's not. I mean, God has gifted me with some crazy stuff,
Of course, yeah.
but it would have been crazy to be the Israelites back then. It's just you wake up and you just see a giant pillar of fire
Mm-hmm.
at night or a cloud, and that's God, or God's talking to him, and the whole at the mountain and everything.
Yeah. See
It's
the mountains trembling, you know, the ram's horn. Like,
that would be crazy.
it would be insanity.
Well, I guess
Like,
crazy. What I mean is like I would say that, and I guess in our terms, they're extremely lucky to have been blessed with the opportunity. Even like modern day Jews now, they don't have, or at least as far as I understand, they don't have what they used to have before,
yeah.
and so like
No, yeah. I mean,
it's just like even when you go back as far as to like to spoke like even if I just was able to meet Jesus in person, like here, like with my, I know he's in my heart, and we're working on myself, right?
of
But I
course,
mean, to like
right.
to meet him as if I meet my dad in the morning,
Yeah.
like that would have been
Only life changing
like
for anybody.
I'm talking to the king above everyone. That
Yeah.
oh my goodness, and but I'm also scared because what if I would have been just like everyone else and not have. Because I mean, I'd be like everyone else. I'd be born at that time. I wouldn't have the knowledge of
Of course,
what
right.
was
Right.
happening. So what also when it comes to thinking that is like would I be no better or just the same or whatever as them as
Well, I
oblivious
mean, from
or
everything like
anything.
I read, right, it feels like obviously there's people that were doubters, but it felt like the common people didn't really doubt nearly as much as like it was like typically like the Pharisees, like your kings, stuff like that were like not even necessarily doubting, right? Because
Hmm.
like they didn't even question the fact that he was healing. Like they would just take issues with like, why are you doing this on the Sabbath? Just like crazy, like not crazy things, bad word, but like semantics is what they were arguing with him, and it was like
Mhm.
they didn't want to, for some reason, they didn't want to. Oh, I guess I know why, but they didn't want to admit who it was in their hearts, and that's only because, I mean, at least for the Pharisees, right? Like, and then some of the kings too, right? Like he's the king of kings. Like you know what I mean? Like you kind of lose all your power when you're dealing with Jesus, right?
Practically.
Like you can't have dominion over him. Like no,
No, you can't.
he has dominion over you and everything. So they would argue semantics with him, and then more times than not, he would make them look silly. It's like, why are you even arguing with me? What are you talking about? Like, oh, you're hypocritical for this reason. It's like, oh, you don't have a problem with it then, but now you have a problem with it, you know. So, but
People are definitely people are some. It's crazy that God put it up with us
yeah,
for so long.
yeah,
It's crazy because even if I was dealing with myself and I was God, I feel like, oh, I guess that's what differentiates us. I feel like I probably would have left a long time ago.
no, yeah. I don't think that. I mean, it's impossible for us to even kind of put ourselves in that mindset, right? Because it's like we're all corrupted. So it's like the power would corrupt us, the greed would corrupt us at that point. Like you're all powerful, all knowing. Like there's just
Mhm.
a human could never do that job. Literally
No.
by definition. But also, like, we're too corrupted to even have, I mean, think about it, like we can't even have people run countries, right? How many kings, how many politicians, how many of like these sorts of people that have a fraction, right? Like a speck of dust of power compared to God, and it
Yeah.
corrupts them absolutely. So
However, it's definitely something crazy.
yeah, but yeah,
Oh.
that it is. But yeah, I think that's the only thing I noticed out of those was. I mean, obviously the Ten Commandments are powerful, but I thought it was interesting
The politician,
judicial system.
the judicial system is definitely something that I think it sticks out because it's I think it's one of the earlier forms it's no, it is the earliest form of us seeing the
That I know
Israelites
of.
govern themselves
Yeah,
and in accordance to Moses and God.
yeah,
So I think, I mean,
yeah.
it's something
Even
to
at
note.
that rate, it's certainly interesting, right? And then it kind of
Mhm.
sets the groundwork for how God has them operate later on, right? Like obviously, you could say that's like a divine. Like Jethro was divinely inspired,
That's probably what happened.
undoubtedly.
Yeah,
You know.
that is probably what. I mean, that's probably exactly what happened. Was
Yeah,
God
I would say so.
inspired him to speak to him?
Yeah, because I mean,
Because
God's not like, what did
he
Jethro
wasn't.
say? Nah,
Yeah,
let's
he
not
wasn't.
do that.
As far as we understand, he wasn't against it,
No, yeah. And I
and
mean,
so
even
he
like how he
probably.
has the priests operate is kind of right. Like when he gives like this is how Aaron and his sons, etc., are going to operate. Like even them, like he kind of has like a similar process for them. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Definitely feels like divinely inspired. And
He's
he's just
definitely.
visiting, right? So he's just like he comes there and he's like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Do it this way."
Yeah, yeah.
you
It's
know?
cool too. It's like a father figure as well. Coming, he is Moses' father-in-law too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I thought it was super cool, but yeah, I think that's all I have for it. I don't know if you noticed anything that you want to point out, but I think that's all I got for those.
I don't think. Let me. I don't think there's anything that stuck out too terribly,
Yeah,
except
I mean, I
for
feel like
like
the like
I do think that it was funny how they put emphasis on the fact of like Israel was groaning and was
yeah,
like
yeah,
it was like we need water right now, and most
right,
is like, who are you to be groaning?
right, right, yeah,
And I think I was like, and it's funny because I think we can even apply this to our everyday lives that we need, like at least for me personally, like there's a difference between like grumbling and groaning and asking humbly.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the best way to put it is like not to act as if you're entitled, because we're not. We're not entitled to anything. Everything that we everything that we have and we enjoy, and all the way down from the water and food that we drink or that we eat, that we consume, to the entertainment that we're able to enjoy,
Right.
is all a gift from God. So to be and this stuff that, I mean, me personally, like I've, in my earlier walks, because walks with coming and trying to build a relationship with God, I used to, like, I started off like with a bargaining, pleading kind of deal because I was younger and everything. And then sometimes it'd be more of a demanding kind of tone when it came to speaking with him, and before starting to develop in a more humble um, way. Because like even now when I pray, like when I pray by myself and whatnot, like before bed and everything. And sometimes when I get the urge in public, I find a secluded space. I get on my hands and knees, or I'll kneel down,
Right.
because just like just like Moses says, I mean, I am I am not worthy at all to be. I like, I guess the way I put it is like when we do worship in church and stuff, you know, how everyone's hands up and dancing and everything, and that,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's beautiful. But at the all time, I think like we don't even deserve to be looking up towards him,
Right.
or or even this, have him looking at us.
Right.
And so, and that's something I think like I'm working on myself too, is trying to be continuously humble in regards when it comes to God and Jesus, because not like absolutely nothing, from like I said, the food to the entertainment to even his presence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, obviously, right. Like you have to be careful with that to a certain degree because I think that that's also like being humble, right? Obviously, recognizing that he is like he's the master of all, right?
Yeah,
But then also not letting it become the enemy will use that, right? The enemy will use that of like I'm not worthy to, you're not worthy, to try to turn you away from that. So you have to kind of like you have to like realize like yes, I'm
yeah, you
not
gotta be doing it
worthy.
for the right
He's God. He's the
reasons.
master of all. But
Yeah,
also he loves me and he wants a relationship with me. So
yeah, you
to
gotta
some
be doing.
degree I am worthy at least of his love, right?
Yeah,
So
you gotta be doing it for the right. Just as much as what we do is important, and why we
yeah.
do it is just important. Because like, and that's something I remind myself and working on my self-esteem and whatnot. Because like, it's something my dad pointed out to me, and he's like, you can't be so self-deprecating,
Yeah. Yeah.
because who am I to say that I'm not worthy if God decides I am,
Right,
right? It's
right.
like what you're saying.
Yeah.
I can't go. I can't. It's basically me going to go, like he said, like my dad told me like a couple of days ago. He's like, it's basically you going to God and saying, no, you're wrong.
Yeah, right. Like, yeah, I love you. I want you with me. Nah, no, you don't. Yeah, it's like, wait, what?
So that's something that, just like you're right. That's something I also got. I gotta be humble, but not put myself
I mean, yeah,
down at
the,
the
the
same
enemy
time.
uses stuff like that, right? Like, he will, he'll feed into that. He'll be like, yeah, you're not worthy. You're not worthy. You should give up. You're never gonna, you know what I mean? Like those sorts of things.
Whoa,
Which we
yeah.
all hear voices like that, but yeah. So like,
You're
he'll try to
crazy if
use
you
that
don't.
for
If
sure.
you crazy if you think you don't. I'm gonna tell you that right now. We all
Exactly. Yeah.
we all get
Everybody
the little
has
voices
self
in our
doubting,
heads.
that little voice in their head that that tells them they're not worthy. So
Well,
yeah.
I apologize for being late. I had to go to the store to pick up groceries.
I mean, you don't need to apologize. You don't have to be here at all. So I mean,
Well,
thank you for coming.
I enjoy
No, yeah, me too, a lot.
this opportunity of being here and communicating with people,
Yeah.
because I mean, I'm at work during the morning, so I definitely don't have an opportunity to go to church.
Right.
And even then, there's something. And so, if anyone ever watches this, because we put it on YouTube, right?
Yeah. Yep.
There's something. There's there's just something about talking to other people about what you think and how you feel when it comes to your walk with God and
Right.
Jesus, that is just, it's otherworldly. I mean, I don't know
Mhm.
how to, because I mean, it's just like we weren't ever meant to be alone. We were meant to be with God.
Right.
God also made us as social creatures too.
Exactly.
And it's
Yeah.
just like there's just something magical about having people talk and help each other in their own walks as well.
Yeah.
Or people be like, or people watching out for you, or like people who aren't scared to tell you what you're doing is wrong.
Right.
Because that's way more important than people telling what you're doing is right, is when they're willing to tell you what you say or do is wrong, or like, or here's my idea, and this and that. Because
Oh yeah. I mean, it's
I
it's
just think
uh
that's
it's a
crazy.
form of love, right? Like if you love somebody, you should love them enough to be able to tell them that what they're doing is destroying them. You know. And if you can't do that, then you could beg the question of if you ever truly love them. Like if you truly love somebody and you know what they're doing is destroying them, how could you not tell them to save them? You know. So
Because you just want them to live. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. You want them to live and not only live but prosper. So no, I agree 100%.
But
Certainly important, right? And I mean, like, I mean, what's Jesus say? Every time there's two or more gathered in my name, I'm
good.
there with them. So, like, you can read the Bible, but I think it's important to gather in His name, so that way He's
Have
there and
community is
He's
definitely something that's super important.
yeah, 100%. Yeah,
But
seek and you
I'll
shall
let
find.
I'll let you enjoy the rest of your night, man. I'm gonna get ready to eat some dinner.
I boast.
Um, you take it easy, and thank you for having me, man.
Yeah, you as well. You as well. Enjoy dinner and have a good rest of your night.
You as well. Be safe, brother.
You as well. Bye bye.
God bless.
See
God
ya.
bless.
Remember, all of us are sinners, yet we are loved by Jesus. I pray that you listen to this message and remember the sacrifice he made so that your suffering would not be eternal, but that your love would be. Amen.